Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla. Welcome to episode 2 of our Sportster Parts Modification Series. For those of you who didn't catch the first episode, let me bring you up to speed really quickly. We played dress up with our Sportster and we put a couple of different exhausts on here, both some slip-ons as well as a few full systems. We wound up settling on this 2-into-1 pipe you can see on here. Now in episode 2, we're going to be tackling air and fuel. It's no accident that those two episodes are smushed right next to each other and they're at the beginning of things. Those parts tend to work together. They have to be harmonious in order to be happy. Now in episode 2, as I had mentioned, we're going to be concentrating on air cleaners. Now before I get too far, I'll tell you this is probably a one bearder on our BSD, our beard scale of difficulty. It's a simple bolt-off, bolt-on procedure most of you should be able to attack very simply if you have general shop knowledge as well as a couple of decent hand tools. If you're not certain though if this is a task you can do by yourself, I'd encourage you to check out our full air cleaner installation video, where we use our house street glide and swap out both air cleaner elements as well as entire air cleaner assemblies. And it's very, very similar to what you're going to do on your Sportster. Now before I get cracking here, I do want to remind you that this piece of content is just one of many we offer at RevZilla.com. We're constantly reviewing gear as well as parts and bikes, beating them up and reporting back to you on how those items performed. Be sure you subscribe to us so you can catch that content as we're rolling it out. I'm going to get my tools out. Let's get to work. I've been wrenching away and I've had each of these air cleaners on our bike and have developed some thoughts about them. Before we get to that though, let's talk a little bit of theory and sort of game plan as far as our Sportster is actually concerned. So we're talking about Harley air cleaners. I think pretty much everybody understands the function of an air cleaner. The primary function is to clean up the incoming air charge, filter out dirt and particles that can otherwise harm your engine. However, there's a secondary job that the air cleaner on a Harley has to handle that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. And that job is dealing with crankcase pressure. Specifically, your engine has to breathe. As the pistons are moving up and down in the engine, you're going to develop crankcase pressure. That just happens. It's a natural byproduct of having an engine. That crankcase pressure needs to be relieved somehow. And typically the crankcase gases are a mixture of blow-by gases as well as hot air and also some oil mist. So what Harley does to help combat this is they actually have internal passages that expel that gas and try and separate the oil, keep the oil inside the motor, and then let the hot air and gases be filtered through the air cleaner. Your factory air cleaner actually has provisions to deal with that. However, in the aftermarket, that's not always the case. So these holes up here serve as more important functions than just a place to hang your air cleaner. Instead, if you look in here, they're not actually blind holes. They actually go through these very complex passages that help those blow-by gases and crankcase pressure sort of be relieved. One of the other things I do want to drive home with you too is just about anything you see up here or on the website is going to provide more air than your Sportster can likely use. So it's because of that that I would say for most of you, you can probably just choose what looks nicest to you, what you think is going to look best on your motorcycle. There's no reason necessarily to sit here and nitpick over what's going to amount to just fractions of a horsepower on a dynamometer. Now let's jump into some of the products that we've got some of that out of the way. The first one I want to discuss is actually a holdover from episode 1, and that's the Vance & Hines Fuel Pack FP3. Now specifically, this was a great fuel tuner for us to use, but the reason I'm bringing it back in here again is if you're modifying either your exhaust or your intake tract, or for some of you who are modifying both, the fuel system also needs to be modified. We get this question all the time on Common Tread, folks wondering if they have to modify their fuel system, and the answer is an emphatic yes. If we go and we put something like a higher flow exhaust on there, or perhaps a better flowing air cleaner, we're making that already lean bike even leaner still. So keep that in mind. It's very important to readjust that air-fuel ratio. Let's get into the air cleaners themselves though, because that's what you're here for, that's what you're watching. And the first one we're going to kick off with here, the S&S Stealth, is a product I'll be perfectly honest about. I wasn't that excited when we first took this thing out of the box, but when I saw some of the features and benefits that S&S was bringing to the table here, I got more and more excited about this Stealth. It really changed my mind. I was really happy about it. So let's discuss the name real fast. It's the Stealth air cleaner. The reason they call it that is this air cleaner setup is a high performance air cleaner, but it's designed to hide behind your factory Harley housing. So I'm going to give Harley actually some credit where credit is due. Our 2016 Iron came with an air cleaner cover that I thought actually is pretty attractive. But I really do like this for a couple of reasons. First, I know there's some of you out there who like to maintain that street sleeper look. You want to pack a lot of horsepower punch, but you don't necessarily want to advertise it. So big points to S&S on that, but for me, the real seller on this was actually this little sticker that came in the box. You know, we wouldn't think that a sticker would be all that cool, but it's actually what's on the sticker that I really like. Down the bottom there, you'll notice that's an exemption number for CARB. S&S has been out in front making sure that their products are CARB approved, which I'm absolutely loving. It's very difficult and expensive to get products approved through CARB, and this is one of them. It's very rare that you can put hot rod parts on your motorcycle, but S&S is out there making sure that they're taking the time to get those CARB exemptions that are important. So if you live in California, S&S has got your back on that. For me, that was almost the biggest value add right in the box. It was something I was really surprised and excited to see when I opened that air cleaner up. So let's move on down the line here. The next one I stuck on our bike was an air filter that probably needs almost no introduction whatsoever, the Arlen Ness Big Sucker. This could be arguably the most popular air cleaner we sell here at RevZilla.com, and it kind of makes sense. It's a classic looking, timeless design, round, very basic, and you've got a couple different options on the cover. You can see here we've got this wrinkle black finish. I'm happy to report that this is a dead ringer on the match for the wrinkle black that comes on the Harley engine. For me though, the big winner here was the optional stainless jacketed filter that we ordered for our bike. I've seen these, I really wanted to get one in and use it. I love the fact this has this stainless jacket. So if you look at just about every other high flow air cleaner on the market, you're gonna see a pink air cleaner in there. And that's because these are made from cotton gauze, and then that gauze is oiled. And typically the oil used on them is red. It gives a distinct pink appearance to the filter. Now I think most people see that and they understand it's just part and parcel of the high flow air cleaner. But Arlen Ness said, no, we don't necessarily need to do that. Instead, they use this stainless mesh on the outside here. They use a white gauze inside there, and then they use a clear oil. So you don't have to have a pink looking air cleaner. It's a nice touch, I like it. And again, given that we're going with that black and metallic look sort of on this motorcycle, it blends in really well. Of course, the performance benefit here, obviously it's something that everybody knows about. The Big Sucker is definitely good if you plan on making big power. So again, for those of you guys who are thinking about going to a crazy set of cams or maybe putting some wild headwork into your motorcycle, a Big Sucker might be just the way to fly. Moving on down the line, you can see here the next filter I stuck on our bike was a Performance Machine fast air intake. So this was kind of like the S&S Stealth, a filter that I was originally a little bit lukewarm about, but I came to like it. So the reason I was lukewarm on it is that 90-degree look. I'll be honest, it's a little bit billety, a little bit pro street for my liking. If you check out too on the back of this thing, you can see some of these recut areas. That's a little flashy for what I normally like aesthetically. Doesn't necessarily discount this, it just means that that's the way my tastes happen to run. So regardless of what I think about it, this is a hot look right now. A lot of people are trying to, again, go with that 90-degree look, and why shouldn't you go to the aftermarket for it? PM has made a great air cleaner here, but the thing I was most impressed about, again, let's just mock this back up real briefly. The thing I was most impressed about, I think, with this, despite the fact it's visually very large, as a commanding presence on the bike, you have plenty of knee clearance here. This did not interfere with my leg absolutely at all, which I was actually very happy about. So ultimately speaking, I wasn't necessarily super duper stoked on this until I started using it, and then I really did grow to like it quite a bit more. It's a solidly made piece, and I wound up a lot happier with it than I thought I was going to. So let's move down to our last section here. You can see we have a TC Brothers Ripple intake, and then we also have some breather bits over here. So let's get back to thinking about that breather game we were talking about earlier. As I was mentioning, if you want to deal with some cool guy, tiny little air cleaner, that's totally possible, but if you're doing it on a late model bike, you may have to figure something out for your breathing scenario. So there's a couple products we have up here that I've used in the past and had good luck with, one of them being here this Drag Specialties breather kit here. This breather kit is something I've used on lots of big twin Evo builds. I'm not really a sporty guy, but they do make one of these for the Sportster. And what these do is bolt up right in place of your breathers, right? And those will wind up bolting up. But if you'll notice over here, what we have is a little barb fitting on here. And this is meant to put a piece of hose on there so you can either route your breather gases through a vent or a catch can, or run them to atmosphere if it is legal for you to do so. As long as your air cleaner clears that horseshoe-shaped piece, you should be able to run just about whatever you want. Now, I wanted to move outside my comfort zone, move outside of what I know and love a little bit. There's no point researching stuff if you're just going to use the same stuff you've always used. So that brings up the Lowbrow Customs breather bolts. Now, these are a cool product. I've seen them selling them for a while, and I've also seen these on a couple of motorcycles, but I've never put them on a bike myself, nor have I ever owned a motorcycle that already had a set installed. So the day I installed those on here, we've been running this bike around. It was super hot outside. The bike was also very, very hot from having beaten the snot out of the thing. After beating this thing up, I was all over this thing with a rag in both my finger, trying to find any traces of oil residue. And I'll say these little tiny separators do a bang up job. These things are the cat's ass. They worked fantastically. The only thing I can knock these for, I think, is if you look in here, you'll notice maybe just the slightest bit of the black electroplate finish coming off of there. So if I had to reorder these, I probably would do it in a chrome. I think the chrome would probably be a little bit more durable, or I would have been a little more careful and maybe taped up our snap ring pliers so I didn't ding up that edge so much. But again, I feel like a very small complaint for an item that's not particularly expensive and really is a compact, elegant solution to an age-old problem sporty owners have had over the years. Now remember, all of this breathing stuff, the reason I'm discussing this was in our effort to run the TC Brothers Ripple intake you can see up here. So let's just, again, mock this up quickly on the bike. Look at how tiny this puppy is. The profile here is very, very small. I love the way this looks. It looks like it belongs on like a lawnmower or something, but thanks to that high flow filter in there, it's gonna let the bike huff down all the air it wants. Now, one of the reasons I was so interested in this too is knee clearance. I get a little bit cramped on a Sportster. These are fairly small bikes and I'm a fairly large man. Fortunately, the TC Brothers Ripple's diameter is small enough. I have plenty of leg room on here. There was no prayer of me banging my knee into this, which was kind of a nice surprise. So at any point here, if you want a little bit more information, click that info button, and we're gonna show you detailed product reviews on all the air cleaners you can see up here. Now make sure too, you click that subscribe button because we're heading back out on the bike in episode 3. You're gonna get real-time reactions as we install a number of suspension components as we attempt to make our Sportster ride just a little bit better and also gain a little bit of that ground clearance we had talked about back in episode 1. Now I'm going to install this TC Brothers air cleaner because this is the one that's going to live permanently on this motorcycle. I'm Lemmy, and I'm out of here.